Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, if you've been following along for the last few weeks, boy, we have been taking a deep dive into everything that's related to the job market right now. And this one, I think it's going to take a little bit different of an angle because, let's face it, if you are in people and culture or HR, you are the people, the people who love people and want to keep us connected and keep us thriving and keep us having our company pride so high and loving where we work. But you look at the flip side in 2023, as per layoffs.info, 262,000 people were laid off in the tech industry alone in the United States. And what I want to talk about today and simplify is, well, how do you rebuild company culture after a massive layoff? Because boy, howdy, that's when everything changes. The energy shifts at your company. I believe that Daniel Stokes is the right person to talk to simplify this specific topic. And he is our special guest today. He is passionate about connecting the world through intentional programs, events, and experiences. He's got over 8 years of experience in the corporate culture building realm with big, large scale corporate events and more. And he's played a pivotal role in building community at companies like Brex and DoorDash and Meta. He's a seasoned professional, and I believe that he also combines his expertise with a genuine love for people, making him a pioneer in the space of people and culture, and again, helping to create spaces where people love to come to work. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Daniel Stokes. Hey, Daniel.
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's go back to what I said at the top of this episode. 262,000. And you were one of them,
Yes,
and I was one of them.
one of the lucky two.
We have been flung back out into the world, and I imagine if not by now, there will be a great company that scoops both of us up.
Yes,
Knowing
yes.
the things that we bring to the table. But I've been through this once before, many years ago, and it sucks. Let's just call a spade for what a spade is. A layoff stinks, right?
Yeah, totally. It's definitely one of those things where it's like, it's obviously unexpected when you're on the receiving end. And also on the flip side, if you're the one of the individuals that stays after a layoff, there's just so many emotions that are going through your mind because it's like these are friends, these are colleagues, individuals that you built bonds with that and within a matter of minutes, like they're deactivated. You can no longer communicate with them. You're like trying to find them on LinkedIn. Like it's a lot. A lot goes into a layoff, regardless of what side of the spectrum you fall on.
Yeah, the scramble afterwards. And let's talk about that because there's sort of that survivor syndrome, the people that didn't get cut from a layoff, and what they can feel afterwards. There's sort of that guilt of like, well, why did I get to keep my job when this person over here is clearly incredible and does
Yeah.
so much to build up the culture here at this company? It makes no sense. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've been through layoffs before where I was one of the survivors of a layoff, and now being one who did not survive a layoff, it's definitely one of those things of like, was my job function not important? Did my work not
Mhm.
matter? And it's like these are obviously natural feelings to feel. And then you have, again, individuals reaching out to you like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe you of all people got cut. Like everything that you did was so important and so impactful.
Yeah.
And so truly, you have to be able to step back and really realize that it's not your fault. It's nothing personal. Like at the end of the day, like it's just the nature of the world that we're in right now. And so really being able to realize that like you are important, your work is impactful. It's just right now the business has to make some very unfortunate decisions, and letting you go and letting your position go was one of those decisions.
Yeah. And so let's talk to those who are listening to us right now who are survivors, who the ones that didn't get cut. What would you recommend? Like this again is coming from your years and years and years of experience in people and culture,
Yeah.
program management, and all of that. What do you feel is the first step that the HR or people and culture team really need to take immediately after a layoff has been announced at their organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think the immediate thing that, individuals in this space who are on the people team, culture space, is ensure that the company is giving those employees that are left space. Um,
Mm.
you know, there's so much going on through their head, like, automatically, how much is my workload going to increase? Is the company in a good spot? Is there going to be another layoff coming, and will I, not survive that layoff? So really just being able to say like, hey, we understand that what happened today was not something that we wanted to do. And like, we just want everyone to take a step back, close your laptops for the rest of the day, focus on yourself, focus on your families, focus on your well-being. And obviously, working on the back end to have all that those communications ready to go out, cancel non-critical meetings. Like, yes, we understand that we have jobs because we have to get work done, but we have to really be human in this aspect and really kind of cancel non-critical meetings and make sure that you're sharing resources that the company maybe have access to around like mental health and wellness, just to really focus on the human aspect of having an employee and making sure that they are taking care of themselves and really allowing them the space to just take a deep breath and breathe for a little bit.
And I want to put a pin in what you just said, the human aspect of all
Hmm.
of this. Because while, a layoff, well, let's be real, a layoff doesn't happen overnight. It is a
No.
thing that is planned for months and months in advance, and done in a certain time period to help either make the numbers look right for shareholders, or,
Hmm.
just to ensure that the company is positioned for success for future. But the reality is, there's humans involved on both
Hmm.
sides of this coin. And I think that people and culture teams and HR teams that have ever done massive org restructures or change management know this, but sometimes forget.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not crisis communications right in the moment, because theoretically you've been planning this for months or even
Hmm.
weeks. Let's give you this a little bit of credit if it's last minute,
Yeah.
but you should still be able to map out before the day happens to say, okay, these are the 5 things that we're going to roll out in the first 24 hours.
Hmm.
This communication here, this town hall there, this blah, 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 blah. And have a plan of attack, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think you really have to kind of like walk backwards and making sure like you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and truly thinking on both ends of the people that are getting laid off and the
Yeah,
people who are surviving any and every question that they could possibly come up,
yeah,
because you're then going to have individuals who no longer have access to, HR immediately, that have been cut off from, the Slack channel, their emails, and
right.
they may be hitting up old coworkers and being like, hey, can you find out like when this is happening? But really being able to clearly and concisely have all of that information readily available on both ends. So when the people are getting let go, letting them know, like specifically, this is when your severance package is going to come through. These are the steps to ensure you have, insurance for X amount of time a period. But then
Yeah,
also communicating that information to the employees that are staying, because like I said earlier, like these are people that you've built bonds with, you've gone on offsites with, some people have maybe even penetrated your personal life that you really have grown connected to. And not only are you feeling guilty, but you're also like wondering, like, is my friend okay? Is my colleague okay? And you
yeah.
want to be able to make sure you're offloading all of that information and giving the employees that are staying just a little bit of glimmer of hope that there was that human aspect thought about it. Again, I think in the nature that we are in right now in corporate America, layoffs are kind of expected, but it's more so like how the layoff is handled, how it's communicated. People aren't chasing to get answers. I think that is some of the really critical things that actually differentiate setting yourself up for success, to go move forward and start rebuilding that trust with the employees that are actually staying at a company.
And what I hear under all of that is empathy.
Yes,
It's just
empathy, empathy,
simply
empathy.
understanding, if the tables were turned and you were in that role that just got eliminated, what would you want
Hmm.
from as resources from your HR team, in that exit conversation, whether it's an FAQ page that has links to all of my benefits, so I know
Hmm.
exactly the contact name, the website, the phone number to call to for next steps. or who is my personal contact at the company as I'm trying to navigate these things? Because
Mhm.
you don't think about it when you're
Nope.
happily employed. You don't you just keep chugging along and nothing the wiser. I think empathy goes a long way in helping what can be very shocking for people when it happens, especially when it seems like the company is soaring and things are
Yes.
going great, right?
Record-breaking profits and sales and revenue. And you're like, woohoo, can't wait for my bonus. Like,
Yep.
exactly, exactly.
So we talked offline, and one of the things that you said struck me. You said that culture repair is everyone's job and
Yeah.
not just the job of HR or the people in culture teams. Why do you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like obviously when we're brought into these positions to be on people and culture teams, we're brought in to build programs for employees, build programs for the people at the company to tap into, to be able to, develop their own skills, to make connections. But like me as a culture curator, if I'm the only one showing up to these events and these programs, it's going to reflect back on leadership as in this isn't important, this isn't valuable. Why do we have these programs? Let's cut the budget. Let's not focus on that. And so I think a lot of times employees are kind of just like, like I don't have time for that, or like that's for like new hires. And it's just like, no, like
Mm,
studies show that employees that are tapped into this type of work are truly the ones that are getting the most out of their employer and are really the ones that really show up every day, really motivated and coming to work. And so when you're able to show that and whatever way you're capturing metrics that say like 60% of the company tapped into this is going to look back on from leadership and be like, okay, this is important. And so I think people really have to understand that like we're not just doing this to do this. We're not just doing this to check off a box. We're really doing this because we want you to feel something and to feel that connection
mm,
to this job. You spend more time at work, whether it's virtual, hybrid, more time in that space than you do outside of it. And so it's just like these positions were created to make sure that you're enjoying the time that you're putting into this space.
yeah, and let's just go back to the immediate aftershock of when a layoff happens, regardless of where you sit on the fence, whether you were eliminated or you stayed. There's a shock. You lose those relationships, that the
Yeah.
people you eat lunch with every single day and talk about Love is Blind every single day
Yes.
or whatever, and then immediately that's just shut off. It's hard. It's hard for both sides of the fence, and I imagine that also for survivors, they just don't know what to say, and so they say
Mhm.
nothing at all, and even
Yeah.
that hurts. If you've been eliminated and you're just like, well, we were really close work friends, and now there's nothing,
Yeah.
right?
It's that awkwardness because again, it's just like, wow, I'm so grateful that I have a job, but it's also like, oh my goodness, like the person I was literally talking to 5 minutes ago about a project is no longer here. And we also had plans this weekend to hang out outside
Yeah,
of work. Like, and I've witnessed it many a times where people who you would assume will be the first person to text you, hit you up, don't reach out for like a week. And they're just like, I just want to give you space. And it's just like, that can sting, that can hurt. But again, it's like,
yeah,
I'm not going to hold it against that individual, but it's like, that's just the nature of it all. Because at the end of the day, unless, you're in the 1%, we work to help provide for our lives and,
yeah,
pay bills. And so to know that, especially in a market where everyone is trying to find a job and, there's more people looking for jobs than there are jobs, you just know the nature and the severity of like, this individual is about to go through something that like I would not ever want to be in that position. And so it's
mhm,
really just being able to be like, again, that it all comes back to that human aspect. Like, as awkward and uncomfortable as it may be, just like really put yourself in that person's shoes. Just send a quick text, let them know that you're thinking about them,
yeah,
maybe send them a job if that's as comfortable as you feel like communicating, because a little bit goes a long way. There's so many people
yeah,
that reached out to me who I hadn't heard from in years. And it's like, thank you for sending me this job. Sometimes the jobs don't even align with my own career path, but it's just like to know that and people are just thinking about me in that manner. It truly does go a long way. So it's just like, let's let's all really add some empathy and human aspect to a lot of these interactions, regardless of where you fall on that fence when it comes to these layoffs.
Yes. So if you're listening to us right now and you're a survivor recently of a layoff, I encourage you right now, press pause and go send a text message to one person right now. And that says, hey, I'm thinking of you. Well, how's your job search going right now? How can I help? That's it. You don't have to say anything else.
Yeah.
So, with going back to kind of rebuilding company culture inside the company, the
Mhm.
reality is trust is lost
Yeah,
after a
completely
layoff.
lost.
I mean, anything that you've done is been obliterated at this point. So, what are ways that managers and senior leadership can really work together to rebuild that trust in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is to, as management, as leadership, acknowledge one, the trust is lost, and it's going to take some time to rebuild that. Like, you know, obviously there are people who are still there and they survived, and it shouldn't just go to like business as usual. You really have to acknowledge that we have done something that has really disrupted a lot of individuals' lives, a lot of teams' lives. Again, there's going to be a restructure of teams, there's going to be a restructure of workload, and we really just have to like address that from the beginning. And I think it's you have to be open and you have to be honest and you have to be transparent. Let's not play the blame game of the macro, the micro environment. Like, no, like let's take accountability as a company and say, you know, because of X, Y, and Z from the board and where the industry is, we had to do X, Y, and Z, and this is why we did it. Obviously, I think there's sometimes you want to try to not be as transparent because you may have people who may leak it to some news place that will then run an article
Mhm.
about, how your company is running. But I think sometimes, that's one of the risks you need to take to really maintain that trust because, you know, who knows? Maybe you might find out more as an employee from that article than you heard from your actual employer. And
Woof.
which has happened. And that is whoop, that is just going to put you back 10 further steps in where you were already after that layoff. So it's really trying to get ahead of everything and really just be open and honest about what is going on. And then it's like we said earlier, like really show empathy, like for not only the employees that were let go, but the individuals that were still staying because it's again, there's so much going through their minds that it's really hard to kind of just like close your laptop and then the next day I wake up and be like, alrighty, let me get back to this doc that I was building for this program. Like, what is this program even still going to exist? Like, where are the workflows going to be now? Like, I
Yeah.
do not know what's going on. And like, there's a lot of emotional damage that has been done. Again, also knowing that the market outside of this environment is not stable. So you really just have to be acknowledged and be really upfront and honest. Be very clear and concise in your communication. Don't make it a blame game and really, 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 really show empathy to those employees that are still there. And I think that will start to put you on the track to gaining trust, but you need to start hit that cycle of that continuation of the acknowledgement, of the empathy, of that clear and concise communication to then build it because it won't happen overnight.
I agree. And while you're talking there, it made me kind of think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So it's a pyramid. And by the way, anyone who's listening to us, anything that Daniel and I talk about, it will be in the show notes over at thesimplifiers.com. You can find it there. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid. And at the very base level is safety and security. If you do not feel safe or
Mm.
secure in your work, it's impossible for you to rise up in the ranks of the pyramid and talk about community, talk about purpose, talk about anything that's a higher pursuit because you are scrambling to just feel safe. And
Just
and I
feel
think that
safe.
this is incredibly important, especially for folks that are in people and culture or HR, because you are stabilizing the ship. And so,
Hmm.
I love the things that you were saying there, and even to the point where you provide some talking points, 3 or 4 questions for
Yeah.
people, leaders, and managers to take back to their teams in smaller groups and say, wow, that was big. let's talk about it in a
Yeah,
smaller format because, you know, let's face it, if you're at a town hall, you're probably not going to ask a question in front of 600 people like, hey,
exactly.
hey, is there going to be another round of layoffs soon? Am I okay? Because like you're never going to say that in that bigger format, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And so it's really about making sure you're addressing it at all levels. Obviously, you're going to want to
Mm,
address it at that town hall, but then in your smaller teams, really kind of try to build that and create that space to have that conversation all the way
yeah,
down to like your one-on-one. Because again, maybe we don't want to talk about this in a larger team format. Maybe I just want to have this one-on-one conversation to truly let you know how I feel. So just really kind of making sure at all levels you're creating that space.
yeah,
And also, as people leaders, providing managers with those talking points. Because, I've worked with many managers who where I would think something was so simple to comprehend. It's just like asking your employees and your teammates a simple question totally goes over their head because it's
yeah.
just not everyone is set up to think and process like that. So really making sure you're supplying these individuals with the tools and beforehand, because most of the time managers are going to have some slight heads up about this actually happening, who in their team is going to be impacted. You may know the relationships of your team better than anyone else. So just really making sure, if you know X and Y and Z were really close at work and also outside of work. Maybe,
Yeah.
ask that pointed question of just like, I know that you all were actually close outside of work. Like, how are you really handling this? And allow them to have that space to either acknowledge it or don't acknowledge it, but just let them know that this is a space where if you need to, I am here. I may not have all the answers, but I want to provide that space for you to express how you're feeling. And I can then take that on to know, like, all right, I have to really, think about X, Y, and Z in that manner. And just, again, it goes back to just really being a human and like, how would
Mm.
you like to be treated and handled in this situation?
It's it.
And try to apply
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that what I hear and what you're saying there is you're creating a safe space to
Mhm.
listen.
Yes.
Not to always tell, you know, but to listen. And that goes a long way. That's authenticity there.
Yeah.
If I know that my people leader doesn't have all the answers, but is at least open to hear me, that means a lot to me. That
Yeah.
starts to my porcupine quills start to, you know, go down a little and I go, okay, maybe I am safe for, you know, here
Yeah.
and in this space and he or she is working towards my best interests and all of that. Here's what my thoughts are. I'm very curious. I find that, like to your point, this is not a time to be rolling out empathy training or critical conversations training. You know, if anything, you should probably have been having those training sessions months prior to the anticipated
Months prior.
layoffs,
Let's
right?
not stumble on the critical conversations
Right.
during post
But
layoff.
I am very curious. What's one major mistake that you feel companies make after announcing a layoff?
I think the biggest mistake that companies make after a layoff is like revving up too fast. I think we obviously, again, we have jobs for a reason. We're working
Mhm.
towards a product, working towards a goal. But I think there can be sometimes this very, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like
Everything's fine.
everything's fine.
Hooray!
Like we're all
Sparkles.
here. We're gonna band together and we're gonna roll out 3.0 version of this company. And it's just kind of just
Yeah.
like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like what cult am I in right now? Like we
Yeah.
just cut 1,000 people and now we're just like cheering rah, rah, rah a week after this happened. Like I think you really have to understand that like again, let's not, I don't want to like hear about this next vision that's gonna, we're gonna be doing this, we're gonna be doing that, and we're gonna like take over this industry and take over this market, and we're gonna work together and like, we're all on the sales team or we're all on the marketing team or we're all in ops. And it's just like, I work on the design team. Like,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
like obviously you want to have some excitement around like the vision of a company, but doing it too soon after a layoff just really falls kind of tone deaf of just like, wow, are we really just gonna like move on like that, like as if what we just did didn't happen? And I think
Yeah.
again that's just like one of the biggest things you can do to steer that earning that trust back in the wrong way. Obviously, like over time, yes, but like don't like you have to really give some space, breathe. Like obviously if you have already mapped that out beforehand, like you're sitting on it, you're probably excited to share it out. That's cool, but really give some space and time for everyone to kind of get their bearings, get back to, some of normalcy before we roll out like all these new initiatives and pivots that we're taking as a company.
For sure. Take a beat, right?
Take a beat.
A beat, right? And I think also companies that make massive mistakes when they spend a big splash of money on
Oh,
programs immediately after people have lost their
yes.
jobs, and you go, wait, what? Like, wait, hang on. I thought we just laid off a bunch of people. We could
Yeah.
have spent a portion of that money and kept 10 people,
Yeah, I
20,
don't know.
100
I don't know
people.
where that mindset goes of just like, okay, we just cut all these people. Let's go throw this offsite so we can. And it's just like, if you honestly polled your employees and you were just
Yeah.
like, if we had to do this big thing after a layoff or saved 50 people, I can almost say that without a shadow of a doubt, most of those individuals would vote to keep those 50 people because again, like it doesn't make sense and it doesn't seem fair to,
Yeah.
celebrate and do all these flashy things after you literally just cut someone's livelihood off. Like,
Mm. And key people that maybe were integral to how the way the business worked in the
hmm
past. I also wonder, it really feels to me that it's important to create safe spaces for
hmm
people. And like we talked about employee listen, I really want to go deeper into that. So talk to me about ways that you've created safe spaces for employee listening and actually make it authentic, meaning it's a place that employee feedback can actually be captured and actioned on, not just sort of like we're doing this for the optics of it, but we really, we're not going to do anything with your feedback.
yeah.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. But like really genuinely, what have you seen that works?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, before you even announced, hey, we're going to be capturing feedback from employees to, figure out how we can improve. Like, I think as the people and leadership team, really coming up with clearly defined goals and purpose of, this type of session, whether it's in person, virtual, just really make sure that everyone is aligned and there is a clear defined goal and path and process of how this is going to go. That way, when you announce it, you can clearly communicate that to the T of what exactly, why we're doing it, how it's
Yeah.
going to be done, and then what's going to be done with this information afterwards in hopes of doing X, Y, and Z. I think, again, it kind of goes back to that clear and open communication in all aspects of earning that trust back. So, one, really defining those goals and outlining that communication timeline. And then making sure that you have a diverse group of individuals who are participating in this. And I mean, like, diverse in all ways from backgrounds, way of life, people who are managers, people who are ICs, different levels, different orgs, because you want to be able to have a diverse slate of feedback because one team, one group of individuals may think one way, but another group may think another way. But having both of those um, teams share feedback could actually help you define a problem that helps address both of what they're asking for. So really making sure you're defining a diverse slate of individuals to kind of capture that feedback.
Yeah.
Um, and then also making sure that, the questions that you're going to be asking are shared ahead of time. I think it's kind of one, make people feel a little bit more comfortable going to these sessions. They don't feel caught off guard. They can come prepared. There's no worse feeling than doing these types of sessions. And when you ask a question, it's just like silence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you're just sitting there like, oh, okay, I guess no one's going to talk. I'll move on to the next question. Had that person or those individuals had that question a couple days in advance, one, they may have been able to actually sit on it and actually think about some really actionable things to share, but also feel comfortable sharing them. Because again, especially if you're, in person, not everyone is going to be able to on the spot come up with like 10 things to really save a company. You really want to
Yeah,
be able to give people the time to actually sit on this and really think thoughtfully about how they want to communicate this, and it not be coming from an emotional space, which is it's totally fine to have emotions, but when you're thinking about ways to really improve the culture and really help the company, you want to make sure you're really thinking, logically and really kind of grounded. But then also, lastly, provide a space for people to provide feedback anonymously. Because at the end of the day, you're not everyone's going to feel comfortable speaking out in front of individuals.
for sure.
So if it's fully anonymous or if it's a one-on-one session, again, of diverse minds and individuals, but making sure that you're able to capture this feedback, capture these thoughts in every way, shape, and possible that applies to and appeals to a wide range of individuals.
I love that you said that because I think that that's so incredibly important. Again, if safety and security is at jeopardy for people, the last thing that I think most people are going to do is raise their hand and ask the real question that's on their
Yeah.
hearts and on their
Hmm.
minds in front of senior leadership or in front of their boss. They're too nervous to be the sort of tall weed that pokes out from the grass level, right? It's the one that
Exactly,
gets cut, right?
exactly.
So I think that having a space for anonymous feedback to be shared is really important. It made me think about, I run postmortems as writing workshops a lot, and it's very simple. You can create Google Docs for everybody that's on the team, and you're in person, you're together, and you're facilitating the conversation. You're saying, okay, we're going to spend 5 minutes on this next question, and the question is, how are we feeling, and what do you think we need to do next to recover? And instead of actually saying the answers out loud in the group, they write in the Google Doc, and it's
I
a
love
writing
that.
workshop. Right. And so then after you've got 5 minutes to kind of get everything out of your brain, again, it's anonymous. So there's no, risk of feedback, retaliation or whatever. Then as a facilitator, you can also say, okay, well, does anyone want to share? Like, do you want to talk? And you're given the option to,
Hmm.
spark a conversation if you feel like it, that might be productive for the group around the table. But then you're also, for the introverts out there, you're given a safe space to have your voice be heard and captured, right?
Yeah, I actually love that. I'm gonna take that. I'm
You're
stealing that
welcome.
idea.
You can have it. And ultimately, again, it's all about remembering the human action and aspect. And I think that, back to making it actionable, there's got to be like, where is this feedback going? What are we going to do about it? And by when, right?
Mhm.
And the accountability of that has got to be, you just got to walk the walk, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've seen so many times again where, maybe, and it is in an all hands format where someone asks a
Mm.
question and then we're 6 months down the line and someone's like, hey, on April 10th, I asked this question. This person said they were going to get back to us by the end of quarter. We're two
Yep.
quarters after that. What, like really, truly holding yourselves accountable to this timeline, communicating that timeline ahead of time. That way people can then hold you accountable. And if you don't miss that timeline, if you don't make that timeline, you're putting yourself further back in that trust because people are
Yeah.
going to feel like, man, like we're really building some momentum. I was so excited to see how this was going to roll out in the second half, and it kind of just fell on deaf ears. And then that's just going to slow that trajectory and make people not want to put themselves out there to share the feedback because they're going to be like, well, what's the point? I asked in
Mhm.
this public forum, or I took an hour of my day to, attend this session, or I met with this individual for 30 minutes, and they just don't care. They were just doing it to pretend as if they actually cared, when in fact they did not. And also, I think like being able to share some of that feedback, obviously not share who said it, but if you're
Yeah.
having these sessions, share that feedback that you got in an all hands and being like, we met with 100 employees over the last 2 weeks, and these are the common themes that we saw, and these are the actions that we're going to take. And again, by this deadline, we're going to have an actionable plan to then roll out based off this feedback. And again, hold yourselves
Yes.
accountable.
Yeah. And I imagine also your HR business partners, they're going to be those people that are going to drive, and you need to make sure you equip your HR business partners with this data in a
Hmm.
succinct, way so they can influence senior leadership and say, hey, when we did this focus group, this is what we heard. These are the
Mhm.
actual people analytics and evidence-based data that helps us drive and decide, okay, this is why we need to invest in this people program. This is why
Exactly.
we need to bring in mentor mentee programs for the next 3 months, or this is why we need to invest in this, cultural program to help rebuild. Because I think ultimately, you know, let's face it, when companies are trying to cut corners and improve profit and make them look better on paper for their shareholders, sometimes the people and culture budgets are the ones to get cut, right?
I am I am the pivot king
Oh,
when it comes to my budgets. Like
yeah.
I know what I get on January 1st is not gonna be what I have March 1st.
Hmm. Yeah. So instead of that, like, what would you consider as a better solution to improve employee engagement and rebuild company pride rather than cutting the people and culture budget? What would you recommend to leaders who are out there?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to really adding that empathy and thinking from a human aspect. And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
let's look at where we're spending our money. Do we need to throw these 10 external dinners with potential clients
Yeah.
for the rest of the year? Maybe we cut that and cut that down to five, and then we take that money and shift it over to the people and culture programs. Because time and time after all the years I've been working in this space, the people and culture budget is the first one to get cut. Oh, well, the L&D budget is getting cut. So, we gave you that money every month to subscribe to some news forum. Sorry, no longer use your personal funds. Like things like that you always see. And it's like it may seem small at the time. It's like, oh, it's just we're taking this one thing away. Your employees are remembering this.
Hmm.
And they're making note of it and they're just adding it to the list. They're checking it twice. So if you're able to then say like, hey, we took a look at our budget and we saw like, okay, we obviously want to expand our business and we want to bring in potential clients who may, tap into, what we're selling or what we're trying to build. But we also want our employees to tap into what we're trying to build. So it's, again, like I said, instead of doing those 10 dinners, we're going to do five. And then those funds that we took from those five dinners, we're going to add into this program to really make sure that we're honoring what we promised to you all about making sure we want to build a better company for you all post this layoff to really show you that we care. And so I think that's something that people can really do to really, I think that itself would truly inspire and bring in so much trust. Because like I said, people are looking at what you're spending. And again, they're
Yeah.
making their list. I have gotten text messages from people from previous companies, when things are kind of going rocky and it's like, wow, we had to cut, our summer party, but we just did this yacht party for 10 people. Like what? Like
Hmm.
and yachts aren't cheap.
No, actions are louder than words. And I think that I also believe that your people are your greatest strategic asset.
Greatest
And,
asset.
unless your company is fully 100% run by AI, I doubt it is, you still need the people that you've retained
Hmm.
to help you achieve your business goals and to drive growth. So in my opinion, you need to invest more into the people that you have kept and ensure that they are equipped and they're empowered and they're on the same wavelength as you to help
Yeah.
hit those
Yeah,
business
because
goals.
then they're going to want to actually put the time, the energy, the effort to make sure that you're hitting your goals, you're hitting your metrics. They're really going up. I mean, I wouldn't say above and beyond, but really just making sure that they are putting in the work that is
Yeah.
needed to sustain this company versus feeling as if I'm doing all of this and things keep constantly getting taken away from me.
Daniel, you are a smart cookie, and I have no doubt that the next company that scoops you up for people and culture work, they're going to hit the jackpot,
Thank
100%.
you. Thank you.
And if you're
Appreciate that.
curious about the work that Daniel is doing out in the world, you can go over to our show notes over at thesimplifiers.com. You'll be able to find his LinkedIn page as well as his online portfolio just to see the work that he has done in the past and where he's headed next. And of course, if you want to reach out to him, I'm sure you're an open guy. You'd be happy to set up a chat with anyone that wants to talk
Yeah.
culture stuff,
Yeah.
right?
My messages are open. Please hit me up. I love people, so
Awesome. I don't think I've ever spent as much time on LinkedIn as I have in the last few months, but like, woo, it's the place to be
Woo,
right now.
it's kind of like my like virtual coffee shop. Like
It really is. Well, Daniel, as we wrap up, I got a couple of questions I like to ask everyone on the podcast. So here we go.
awesome.
First off, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Yeah, so a newsletter that I'm actually subscribed to is called Forward Joy. That's
Mm,
FWD Joy. It's by Chrissy Rutherford. She's a digital creator, writer, brand consultant who worked in the fashion industry and left at the height of, 2020 George Floyd to really focus on herself and really bringing equity to a lot of other spaces. She
love it.
started her own consulting company. And I just think she's an overall amazing individual. She writes a lot of personal essays around like mental health, wellness, self-care, her own life experiences. She also interviews friends and other people that she also admires, from everything to astrology to like overcoming addiction. And I just love the way that she's able to look at life, and it truly kind of inspires me to want to like change my own way of looking at life. So definitely check that out. Shout out to Christy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will link her up in the show notes. So you guys can check that out as well. Tell me, who's one person in your network, somebody you know personally, you just feel are up to brilliant things? If we could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Yeah, so I think everyone should check out Maceo Owens. She is someone I used to work with and who started her own company called the ERG Movement. Essentially, she saw a space in the market around ERGs, employee resource groups, and realized that companies were underutilizing them in terms of just like making sure these programs are set up for success. And she really has done so many amazing things around, company culture and ERGs specifically. So I would definitely check out Maceo Owens, from the ERG movement. She calls herself the ERG homegirl.
Love it.
I've never seen someone be able to take data and make it so palpable before as she has. So definitely check her out. She's amazing. She inspires me. And yeah.
Awesome. Maceo, we will have you in our show notes as well. And hopefully you guys can click over to check her out and the work that she does in the world. I believe that gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Today, I am grateful for the community that I've built. The last couple of months have been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of very interesting, weird days. But,
Mhm.
the community that I have built, in the corporate space and my personal life, here in New York, it's just truly, truly come out and shown me so much support. And, the texts, they don't go unappreciated. The messages, I see them. Sometimes I may not respond to all of them. But just know that I see them, and even if it's a repost or a like on a post, something that I'm sharing on LinkedIn, like I'm just grateful for the community that I've built, at this stage in my life, and so that's something I'm very grateful for.
And I'm grateful that you're in my community now. Come on over.
Yes, yes, we're connected, and like thank you for
Awesome.
reaching out to me. It's been like great getting to know you, and
My pleasure. So, my last question for you today is this: someone somewhere is listening to us right now, and let's imagine she is an HR leader
mhm.
and her company just did a massive layoff, and she is desperately trying to scrabble all the pieces together and is feeling a little bit overwhelmed by it all. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would just say like lean on your community. lean on your community, and I think that is something that people can do. Just really lean on the community that they've established and know that it's going to be all right.
And it's not just yours to fix, it's
Exactly.
everybody.
Exactly.
Daniel, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.